خيرا 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 خيرا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا وإمامنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Abdul Latif, alhamdulillah, he held us down on the first trip. Right, Abu Saeed? And was it the second trip or the third trip when he held us down again? He took a blow. We took one too. We all did for the team. Right? We said there's no way we're going to diss our man. No matter what. This, that, blah. That's not how we do things. Alhamdulillah. May Allah bless you, Akhi. It's good to see you. Good to see your smile. It's good to, be embraced. Alhamdulillah. And it's good to see you brothers as well. I ask Allah أن يجمع لنا بين الأجر والفائدة. May Allah give us the rewards. May Allah Azza wa Jalla give us the beneficial information, the ilm al-nafi'. So obviously we're short on time. So let me skip the pleasantries, skip the introductions, and let's get right into it. By the permission of Allah, the Sublime and the Most High. So first and foremost is, for the Hadith on Seeking Knowledge, Volume 2. Not Volume 1, not Volume 3, but Volume 2. We're going to take some selections. Some selections I'm going to pick myself. And other selections I'm going to give you, brothers and sisters, the choice or the option or the vote, shura, what sections or selections you would like to hear from. Fair enough? Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So first and foremost, it says here on page 6, dedicated to my parents. To Abi for turning our living room into a library, and to Ummi for pushing me to read. Just think about that. My father passed away, Allah have mercy upon his soul. Our living room was a library. So even when he wasn't there, if he wasn't there, I was still influenced by him and surrounded by his influence. And alhamdulillah, the library, wasn't money, wasn't weapons or cars or jewelry or antiques, but it was books. And that should be a lesson in itself. And that is, give dawah to your children, instruct your children, advise your children, and leave the rest to Allah. You don't know when and how, who's listening, who's not listening. Al-Muhim, just plant the seed. Plant the seed. Give the opportunity. Keep the door open. You can push a little bit from time to time. You enforce this and this from time to time. But what's important is just allow the opportunity to be there. And oftentimes we become frustrated because we think and we feel that our children aren't listening, or they're being disobedient or stubborn, or why don't you want to follow my footsteps, son or daughter? What's important is just have the door open and allow them to make the choice when they're ready. As I've said many times before, when I was younger, there were things in which I didn't want to listen, I didn't care about listening to, whatever, one ear out the other. But now, being grown, being mature, having my own family, etc., you say, oh man, now I get it. I see what he was saying. That's first and foremost, let alone one of the biggest problems that many people, not all, face from my city, Philadelphia, is they get caught up in the streets. Or they get caught up in the dunya, corporate. Shaytaan doesn't care how you disobey Allah. There's no prejudice or racism in the fire of hell. What's important is that you turn away from Allah's dhikr. Drugs, guns, alcohol, games, or you're a corporate dunya worshiper. Doesn't matter. With riba and stealing people's money and lying and robbing poor countries from their resources. He doesn't care. What's important is that many people, they get caught up and they get stuck thinking that the world is what they see in front of them, and then that's it. Whether that's a house or block or street or project or an apartment building or city or town. But because my father had those books in the living room, the whole living room, I had access to the outside world. And I had the ability to realize by Allah's tawfiq is that life is much more than just Philly. Life is much more than just West Philly. Life is much more than just my block or my street. Life is much more than my friends and my associates. But there's a whole entire world out there that you, by Allah's permission, can see and visit and tour and benefit from. And you can pick and choose. Allah's earth is spacious. But when you're enclosed, that's all you think about are your immediate friends, your immediate profession, your family, your race, your culture, and then that's it. So that's very important. Secondly is my mother, who's still alive. May Allah bless her and give her good and keep her upon all guidance. I mean, she was the one who directly encouraged me and forced me to read and to go to the library. Even before I was studying Arabic and Islamic studies, she would tell me, educate yourself. Don't be a fool on the street. I named you Muhammad for a reason. You need to live up to that reason. So that was a little dedication. Afterwards, the next selection is on page number 8. It states, Allah's name be praised. When they sleep, I read. When they read, I memorize. When they memorize, I make revision. When they make revision, I teach. I am one with knowledge. The art is formless. The way of the disciple, page 36. So I wrote this book some years before the book was actually published. Just like I wrote this book, our latest publication, The Way of the Disciple, just came out. I wrote this years before it was published. So this is an excerpt, not from this nuskha. This is nuskha ukhra, is another version. You won't find this, and this is the UK version. And the States hopefully will have that excerpt, but at least you guys are getting the excerpt. And this is a qaida of our school of thought, the way of the disciple. And that is when they, meaning people who study in a mediocre way, people who study other than hadith, people who just deal with a certain class or group of scholars, people who limit themselves to a timeline, a generation or contemporaries, that's what we mean by they. When they're sleeping, what am I doing? I'm reading. They're snoozing, and now my eyes are in the book. Don't write it down. Don't write it down. Don't write it down. Put down the pen. Don't write it down. Get it here first. Inshallah. So when they sleep, what am I doing? What am I supposed to be doing? Reading. That's number one. And then when they finally catch up a little bit and wake up a little bit, they start reading books. But by the time they start reading, I'm now memorizing, which is a step ahead. I'm making hifz. I'm walking around with the book in my heart, and they're still walking around with the book in their hands. And then when they catch up and they start memorizing, when they memorize, I make revision. I'm reviewing. I'm cleaning up and mopping up, and they're just laying the floor down. I'm sweeping the floor, and they're putting the floor down. I'm revising what I already memorized, and they're just starting their journey of memorization. And when they make revision, when they make mudhakara, I'm already paying zakat on my ilm. I'm teaching. I'm teaching, they're revising. I'm revising, they're memorizing. I'm memorizing, they're reading, I'm reading, they're sleeping. I am one with knowledge. There is no such thing as study time. There's no such thing as I'm going to study inshallah later on. There's no such thing as I'm going to get my degree first, medical school, then I'm going to go to Medina. There's no such thing as, well, inshallah, I study on the side, etc. An hour away. It doesn't exist. And the art is formless. Whether you wear a fitted baseball cap, a Haji cap, a Saudi cap, a Kuwaiti cap, a red checkered scarf, whether you wear this article of clothing, whether you're skinny, whether you're fat, whether you're tall, whether you're small, whether you're male, whether you're female, whether you're in the UK, America, Saudi, it's formless. There's no time, there's no place, there's no race, there's no gender, there is no ta'ifa, no group or gang or band or clique that has a monopoly on knowledge. You are the student of knowledge. You, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, by Allah's permission, you make it or you break it yourself. You figure it out. I couldn't go to Medina because I was too old. That's not an excuse not to study. I can't leave the UK because of some issues in my past. Okay, you can still study. I'm in jail. You can still study. My husband doesn't allow me to go to the masjid. He's jealous of the speaker. Don't go and listen to Abdul Latif. I prohibit you from listening to him. No problem. You can still study. I can't read. You can still study. I'm blind. I'm deaf. I have a limb that's missing. You can still study. I don't have that much money. You can still study. The art is formless. Anywhere, any place, anytime, seeking ilm, being a disciple. It's not about the hoodie that you wear. It's not about the clothes that you wear. Your pleated thobe from Kuwait, mashallah. It's sharp. You having a scarf. You have this tied up. La. The length of your beard. La. How thick and crusty your sajda mark is. Your skin is peeling. La. Being a talib al-ilm begins and ends here and here. How you think, how you feel, how you look at life. I want to research, I want to study, I want to benefit, I want to conduct myself, I want to follow what I learn. That is what a student of knowledge is. And of course, that is the founding cornerstones of the disciple. That's what's meant by that. Khayran, inshallah ta'ala. Alright, so that's the only thing that I'm going to pick. You guys, inshallah ta'ala, will have the vote. Nam, he came to our masjid and he promoted voting, allowed voting. All right, you can go and labas. It's fine. You can go and say that. So I'm going to read the table of contents, or I'm going to read through the hadiths briefly with the time that we have. And then inshallah ta'ala, you guys will pick which chapter or chapters you wish to discuss and read. Fair enough? Okay, inshallah. So the first chapter, which is actually an unofficial chapter, says daily bread. I thought this is a book of hadith. What are you talking about? Bread. By the way, that's the first pre-chapter, daily bread. And then after the daily bread, the next chapter states, get married first or go overseas and study. Not the ruling, but the question. Afterwards comes, how can I seek knowledge and support my wife and children? A very commonly asked question, right? Number 3, a student of knowledge should not neglect his wife. Number 4, the great student of knowledge killer. Number 5, beware of self-amazement and conceit. Afterwards, never fall prey to dawah gossip. Never allow yourself to be picked off by the talons of dawah gossip. A prey. You know what a prey is? It's a helpless, miskin animal that's been snatched up viciously by those powerful talons. And then after the terrified poor rat or mouse is suddenly jerked and yanked off the ground by the falcon or the hawk with those powerful crushing talons, and he soars into the air and then lands again, throws it on the ground. It takes his razor sharp beak and picks open its belly, rips his intestines out, and picks it a piece and eats it alive, basically. You know this, right? It doesn't swallow it whole. It's not like other animals, other predators. It doesn't suffocate it first. It doesn't poison it. But it literally eats the thing alive. It's brutal, it's vicious, it's gruesome, grotesque. Don't fall prey to dawah gossip. Afterwards, Facebook. The student of knowledge and social media. And obviously this book was written when Facebook was still, in. I know Facebook is a little played out right now, at least for the younger generation. I would say Instagram, Twitter, whatever, so on and so forth. The next chapter states, the student of knowledge must avoid personality worship. Every thoroughbred misses a gallop. Your teacher should be an actual expert. Your teacher should be a person of sunnah. Never eat from paper plates. Show your teacher the utmost respect, no matter who she may be. Going back and forth with your teacher with a question mark. Stick to your teacher. The true master of knowledge is gentle with his pupils. The master should offer dua for the learner, demanding more from your teacher. The best teachers are those who are the most generous. Teach the student in the form of a question. Teaching and learning through actions. The permissibility of asking a question for the benefit of others. the permissibility of praising oneself if there is a need, loyalty and thankfulness for your teacher, honoring your teacher's wishes, the brilliant pupil and most prized possession. The knowledge seeker should wear white garments. The student of knowledge has to be mindful of his or her appearance, memorizing and reviewing the glorious Quran, mastery of the sciences of Hadith, the reward for calling others to beneficial knowledge, the continuous reward of spreading the Sunnah, the immense reward for those who defend the Sunnah, patience upon the rigors of calling others to beneficial knowledge, defeating the ignorant with wisdom, cunning ways and gentleness. Do you truly understand what you're reading? Control your ego, O student of knowledge. Never mind the masses, O student of knowledge. The superiority of the people of Hadith above all others. Food for thought. Back to the rhetoric, right? Daily bread, now food for thought. Then afterwards, and obviously those are more than 40 hadiths. Appendix 1, who is a hadith disciple? Appendix 2, the manhajiyya of reading books. Appendix 3 is a Korean cinnamon tea punch recipe. And that's the end of the book. Khayr inshallah, that's the end of the book. So what do you guys think? What you want to read about? And before we go that far, this shows you is that, alhamdulillah, not bragging or boasting, but speaking about Allah's blessings, is that the book is much more than just a compilation. It's not just 40 hadiths thrown together. It's not just copy and paste thrown together. Rather, the book is a hadith work. And every chapter is something that's been thought out and strategized. Individually, let alone cohesively. How these 10 chapters are, you guys paying attention? These 10 chapters are similar. The student, the ego, the dawah worship, rizq, marriage, children. These hadiths deal with how you dress, your appearance, the color. These hadiths deal with your teacher, what to do, what not to do. These hadiths pertain to questions, etc., etc. These hadiths pertain to hadith, al-hadith, reading hadith, defending hadith, etc., etc. It's all thought out, laid out. And there lies no doubt one of the greatest influences, and there are many, upon this book is the work of Imam al-Bukhari, and the work of Imam Ibn Hibban, and the work of Imam Ibn Khuzaymah, and the work of Imam al-Tirmidhi, and the ulama of hadith who will put their fiqh in the chapter headings. As they would say, fiqh al-Bukhari fi tarajumihi. As the Bukhari's madhab is found in his chapter headings. And Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala would make a chapter heading as if it was a question. He would make a chapter heading without giving you a decisive ruling. He would make a chapter heading with an effort. He would make a chapter heading with this, etc. And we've explained all of that in our explanation of the book, which can be found online. Khayr inshallah. So what's it going to be, guys? And let's see who remembers anything from what we just read as well. That in itself is a lesson. Fadl akhi. Daily bread. Daily bread. Allahu Akbar. Right? Anybody else? The great student of knowledge killer. Seeking knowledge and maintaining your family. How many times have we asked about that? Right? Anybody else? Fadl akhi. The student of knowledge and social media. Fadl Bilal. Asking questions for the benefit of others. Today we got something cold. It's tea, but it's not hot. So I don't know if iced tea is popular in the UK. It is. Lately, I've had brothers, declare me an innovator for drinking, not for making actual innovations, but for drinking, cold tea. Khair, inshallah. Anybody else? Fadl ya akhi. Memorizing and reviewing the Quran. Further. The ego, self-amazement, conceit, etc. It's our last ballot, the last vote in the back with the hair. MashaAllah. Falling prey to dawah gossip? All right. So which one should we pick, huh? Anybody support what was already mentioned?
We've got some from the sisters.
Bismillah. You can't ignore the sisters.
100%.
The disciples. Walhamdulillah. May Allah bless them all. Keep them firm. Give them success. Ameen.
The first one says, Sheikh, you should try Lipton iced tea.
Allah. No comment on that. We will make no attempt yet tonight. Inshallah.
But one sister said that the great student of knowledge killer.
All right, so the great student of knowledge killer. That's 2 so far on that one, right? A brother mentioned that. Naam, Tayyib? Anybody else? Anybody else confirming or corroborating what was already mentioned? How to seek knowledge and provide for your family, all right? Huh? That's the first time. We're done with the first round. We're on the second round now. Deli bread. You pointed at him, huh? I saw that. That was quick, but I was quicker. I saw that, mashallah. That's your man, right? Your mate, right? Not your man, it's your mate, right? Khayra. You can't forge the vote, ya akhi. Tayyib, in the green. Self-amazing ego. All right, it's catching up. You. Ego. Student of knowledge killer. Daily bread. All right, guys, daily bread wins. Okay, so inshallah, we'll read and then we'll explain briefly. So it says here, and if you have the book, you can follow along with us. The PDF is available as well. It says daily bread, page 17. Imam Ahmed says, and there's no number, meaning this is an additional hadith, and it isn't included in the actual 40. We took the sunnah of Imam al-Nawawi, the half of the Nawawi. Right. Imam Ahmed says, Hashim reported to us, who said, Suhayd reported to us from his father, who reported from Abu Hurairah, who narrated that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, لا تقوم الساعة حتى يتقرب الزمان فتكون السنة كالشهر ويكون الشهر كالجمعة وتكون الجمعة كاليوم ويكون اليوم كالساعة وتكون الساعة كاحتراق السعفة الخوصة. The hour will not come until time becomes extremely short, so much that a year will be like a month like the day of Jumu'ah, the day of Jumu'ah like one normal day, and one day like an hour, and 1 hour will become like the time it takes to make a small fire. This hadith has been collected by Imam Ahmed and his grand work Al-Musnad. So what's the connection between the hadith that speaks on time shrinking? A year feels like a this, a week feels like a that, a day feels like a this, an hour feels... What's the connection between this hadith on time shrinking and bread, let alone daily bread? And what does this have to do with the student of knowledge and seeking knowledge? You guys got to be quick now. Fadl billah. The way that you prepare bread takes time, takes effort. The yeast, etc., kneading it, the oven, the heat, very interesting understanding. Different understanding. Anybody else? Quick. Daily knowledge that you have to make use of your time. Tayyib. Anybody else? Anybody else? Quickly. The foundations of your knowledge. This is something staple. You can survive just off of bread. It's something to fill your stomach, stick to your ribs. Something that's staple. Something that you can't go without. Breakfast has to, in many cultures, if not most, some bread. Lunch with some bread. Dinner with some bread. Your tea time, afternoon tea, high tea, this and that is with some type of biscuit or some type of, which in actuality is bread. Something that you have every single meal. Not a day passes except that you eat some type of bread. Right? Anybody else? Student of knowledge should make use of his time before it runs out. Khayran. All the answers are great. Perhaps you have one of the most accurate answers, but the other answers are accurate as well. Is that make use of your time before it runs out. Don't play yourself. Don't squander your youth chasing nonsense and foolishness. And that's because the Prophet ﷺ tells us is that time won't remain as it is today. Rather, time, towards the end of time, the sa'ah, it will become what? Shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. When you want to do good, you want to study, you want to go to Medina, you want to memorize the Quran, it's what? It's no time. It's gone. It's over. You had your opportunity. You squandered it. And this is something which should be daily bread, food for thought, day in, day out. My time, my time, my time, my time. What am I doing with my life? When are you going to go study? You're going to wait for another pandemic to break out? You're going to wait for this school to change its curriculum, this country to... What are you waiting for? Go and study. You're not missing anything. Let alone the fact that the scholars of Islam, they have two main interpretations of this hadith. Interpretation number one is that it's literal. And towards the end of time, time will shrink. Run out. And the second interpretation is that 24 hours now is no different than 24 hours back in this dynasty, in this empire, the Khulafa. It's all the same. The sun, the moon, the stars, it's still the same. But the barakah, the use of one's time, let alone just look technology. Where did the time go? What did you do today? You can't even write one book, let alone 10 volumes. How did Imam Ahmed write this? He didn't have a refrigerator. He didn't have an air conditioner. He didn't have a bus. He didn't have a car. He didn't have a cell phone. He didn't have a laptop. And look at the works that they left behind. And that in itself is profound. And this is supposed to be the whole foundation of the entire book. Is be real. Keep it real. Study. Bismillah. It's no time to wait, to hesitate, or to procrastinate. And all of the chapters afterwards are dealing with the hows of studying. But the most expensive thing you own is time. Wal asr. Hands down. Khayran inshallah ta'ala. We'll take one more selection, and that will be the providing for your wife and your children. Khayran inshallah ta'ala. Okay. So the chapter heading states, and before we go forward, daily bread, there's more wordplay. Daily bread is also similar to disciple. And disciple is similar to other things. If you catch on or if you pick up, supper, disciples. You're talking about the wordplay. Understand? An apostle, right? This wordplay is layers within the words. How can a student of knowledge, or how can I seek knowledge and support my wife and children? Hadith number 2. Narrated Umar radiallahu anhu. I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, لو أنكم توكلتم على الله حق توكله رزقكم كما يرزق الطير تغدو خماصا وتروح بطانا. If you were to rely upon Allah with reliance, or with the reliance He is due, you would be given provision like the birds. They go out hungry in the morning and come back with full bellies in the evening. This hadith has been collected by Tirmidhi, An-Nasa'i, in a Sunan al-Kubra, meaning not in Sugra. The asal is that when Nasa'i is mentioned, it's Sugra, al-Mujtaba, and Ibn Majah. The footnote, Al-Hafidh al-Tirmidhi said that it is Hassan Sahih. How can I seek knowledge overseas and still have enough money to pay rent, to buy diapers and baby wipes, to buy my wife her overgarment, her shoes, have food in the refrigerator, water, so on and so forth? How is it even possible? Things are so expensive, so costly. How can I maintain a wife and children and at the same time be devoted to my studies? Is it even possible? So we quoted the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ makes a comparison or an analogy or a metaphor. He's giving us an example. And he says, if you gave Allah His haqq, if you really truly trusted Him, and put your reliance in Him alone, and if you really knew that you were weak and you really don't make the money yourself, then the rizq would come to you, just as the rizq comes to a bird. And what does the bird do? The bird leaves its nest early in the morning, and its belly is khimas, it's empty. There's no worm, there's no mouse, Other birds, if it's a bird of prey, like we said, that vicious bird, people talk about nature, natural, don't eat meat, be natural, be nature. Don't you know how vicious nature is? The animal world is an unforgiving world. And birds of prey, and maybe other birds as well, they just don't eat berries and fruits and nuts and mice. Rather, they will go to another nest and snatch the babies to feed their own babies. And to show you the ruthlessness of how things are. Bottom line, I gotta take yours so mine can eat. It's a lesson in itself. For me to survive, I have to end yours. That's how it is. It's not just a street thing or a gang thing. That's life. In order for our empire to rise, your empire must fall. That's how it is. So the Prophet ﷺ tells us is that the bird leaves its nest each and every morning with no promise or no guarantee, no surety that it's going to come back with food. And what is the nest? What's the purpose of the nest? The nest meaning the little birdies, the little chicks, the little fuzzy, bushy feathered owls that don't look nothing like the mature adult owl or goose or whatever bird it is. Who's going to watch the birds? Who's going to watch the eggs? Who watches the little hatchlings when the mother bird is gone? Who's watching it? Nobody. That in itself is a risk. But the bird still leaves the nest. And the bird, it goes, it flies, it looks, it scours the sky, etc. And this failed attempt. This one gets away. Another bird took its prey. It saw the prey and another bird came in and scooped it, etc. And then eventually, finally, the bird takes something back to feed the little chickens or the little chicklets, little, small birdies. You get the word I'm trying to use. And it tears it up and it feeds them individually. And they open up their little mouths, they're screaming, they're screeching, they're hungry. And the mother, she may feed her small children without her even eating. But it still does it each and every single day. So your job is not to think about how I'm going to make my money, what I'm going to do, is it possible? Al-Muhim is Bismillah. Do the right thing. Call upon Allah, put your trust in Allah, go out and handle your business. And trust Allah. Allah is not going to forsake you. He's not going to abandon you. Allah is not going to make a promise and then leave you empty-handed. Not our Lord. That's not how things are. Allah promises you, but you have to have trust and confidence in that promise. So, why are you getting married? Except to protect yourself, to raise a Muslim family. That's from Quran and Sunnah. Why are you seeking knowledge? Except to protect yourself, to give da'wah, to spread the Sunnah, to protect the Sunnah, to defend the Sunnah, to call people from misguidance. That's from Quran and Sunnah. So it's impossible for two things from Quran and Sunnah to clash. Impossible. It's not going to clash. Rather, the Quran and the Sunnah is in total harmony. So seeking knowledge is a thing. Seeking rizq is a thing. Alimahu man alima, wa jahilahu man jahila. Those who know about it, know about it. And those who don't get it, what do you mean? How can you afford a wife? You're studying, what do you mean? You work on the side cave. They just don't know about it. But this doesn't apply to every situation. You have a wife who's complaining, who's nagging, who only married you because you're handsome. She didn't marry you because you were studious. It's a fact. She married you because you look nice, you dress nice, because you're famous, or because of such and such, or I'll be important when I go to Medina, or everyone knows that I was in Yemen, I was there. So that's why she married you. That's a different story. But if you marry a soldier, a woman that's strong, that's patient, that's going to stand behind you through thick and thin, that's a different story. She'll be patient with no food. She'll be patient with this. She'll be patient with that. So the clash between getting married first, seeking knowledge, working, etc., it isn't absolute. It's not just black and white. But with the right people and the right conditions, there lies no doubt it can and it has worked. With the wrong people, it is a disaster. All right? Khayr, inshallah. I think it's what we've run a long time, yeah? Yeah, inshallah.
5 minutes.
Khayr, inshallah. So we got about 5 minutes, 7 minutes, roughly. We'll try to do the Q&A now. I wish I had more time, wallahi. If it was up to me, I would sit with you all night, finish the entire book. But that's not the case, so let's make the best out of what we can. And inshallah ta'ala, you can, obviously no buying and selling in the masjid, but obviously the book is somewhere. You find the book, you purchase the book, and you can follow along with the explanation. And Allah knows best, you might have the ability to read the book and get further reflection, like you just did. Further interpretation. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. You know, sometimes there's a wisdom with taking a small amount of ilm, and that is something for us to go away. It's something khafif, but it's something that can impact our lives greatly. Sometimes you have hadith after hadith after hadith, and you don't know how and where and what to benefit from.
Outside or whatever.
So we try to benefit from the fact that we take one or two, and inshallah those one or two, we try to make intention that we make it a part of our lives, the benefit we've taken from it, inshallah. We're very, very close to salah time, so we're going to have 2 questions from the brother section and 2 questions from the sister section, inshallah ta'ala. I know, like I mentioned to you guys before, Mufti Q&A, get him up on YouTube, HadithDisciple, and I will tell you, the Sheikh will have your question answered, inshallah. Inshallah ta'ala. Daily uploads. You might have to wait 1 or 2 days, but inshallah if you're mawjood, you're there, the Sheikh will nice you, inshallah. طيب, from the brother section first, inshallah. طيب, تفضل.
فيكم بارك الله. Understood. Beautiful question. How to reconcile between the different definitions of Hassan. First and foremost is that you have to understand is that certain scholars use words and terms differently. Don't write it down. Just understand it. They use it differently. A widespread mistake is to take Tirmidhi's usage of Hassan and apply it to Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar's usage of the term Hassan. It's wrong. Tirmidhi clearly explained what he meant by Hassan in his book, in his Ilal al-Saghir, right? Secondly is, some scholars, they may use the word or the term Hassan linguistically. It's a beautiful hadith, and it may not be actually meaning the technical meaning. وهكذا. So, inshallah ta'ala, you have to study the small books on Al-Mustalah, and you'll come across this chapter on is hadith Sahih, Hassan, and Da'if, or in reality it's just Sahih or Da'if. Only 2 types of hadith, and Hassan being included in Sahih, and the different levels of that, let alone the differences of opinion on is it Hassan or is it not. Wallahu alam. Obviously it's not a lot of time. Wallahu alam. Think in the back, maybe?
Yeah, Robert,
Hassan.
and then we'll take 2 for the sisters after, inshallah. Tafadhal.
What topic? What books? Well, this could be one. For the Hadith on Seeking Knowledge, Volume 1. Seriously. For the Hadith on Seeking Knowledge, Volume 2. No doubt. And let alone, let me say, Andalusi. لو سمحت. كتاب لا يعني عندك. أخذته ولا دفعت؟ لسه؟ طيب. The Way of the Disciple. It's a very, very unique book. And not just because I wrote it, but it's a fact. And one of the reasons why it's unique is that it's written in English for an English-speaking person. It isn't a translation. It isn't from North Africa or the Middle East or Malaysia or Indonesia. It's written for UK, Canada, Australia, and America. So, you got your work cut out. The Way of the Disciple, huh?
Inshallah. We got one from the sister section, inshallah. May Allah make her situation easy. She says, Sheikh, how should I treat my abusive non-Muslim parents? They beat me throughout my childhood. Non-Muslim parents.
Clear. Well, first and foremost, I would advise you to make a lot of dua for Allah to reward you for your musibah, your masa'ib, calamities, misfortunes. Make a lot of dua. Secondly, is ask Allah to purify your heart and your mind. Ask Allah to remove the pain and the sadness and the trauma from you. Ask Allah for that always. And secondly, ask Allah to give you better. Afterwards, I would advise you to get the necessary therapy, the Islamic therapy, and that which is useful from the clinical secular therapy. We're not against therapy 100%, counseling, but some things, you get the point I'm trying to make. It is important. Therapy is important. Counseling and therapy is extremely important. Thirdly, is beware of the Shaytaan playing a trick or a game on you. And that is you having doubts about the qadar, the qada and the qadar. I was bad, it was my fault. How did Allah decree this on me? I was helpless. Where was Allah when they beat me? Beware and know that you're very vulnerable to Shaytaan. And what was meant to be was meant to be. With or without, it was meant to be. You have to submit. And you have to look forward to a place in which there is no fear, meaning for the future, and there is no grief, meaning from the past, and that's Jannah. Afterwards, don't underestimate the power of forgiveness. Forgiveness is powerful. It's hard. I have to practice what I preach, unfortunately. I have my shortcomings. It's hard to forgive certain people for certain things. You have doubts. It's all behind it. But it's powerful. And once you reach the top of that mountain, it's utterly satisfying. Whereas if you don't forgive someone and you constantly hold a grudge, you're allowing that person to punish you. Because you're thinking about them and you're thinking about revenge and what they did. So the person physically beat you and abused you, they did harm to you. They're in your heart, they're on your mind. You can't enjoy your food, you can't enjoy your career, you can't enjoy your marriage. They're still doing what? They're harming you. So forgiveness, not only is it best for you, is it healthy for you, but it feels good. I'm bigger than that, I'm greater than that. You know what? It's all right. I forgive you. Let alone the fact that you don't know what your parents went through. It doesn't mean that it's right, but you don't know what they went through. And we say in America, perhaps you say here in the UK, hurt people hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. Perhaps, Allahu Alam, that happened to you because it, unfortunately happened to them. And there's a cycle. And they didn't know how to do any better. So have compassion for your parents. Have sympathy for your parents. Make an excuse for them. And perhaps that's your way to Jannah. Wallahu Alam.
Final question, inshallah, and then we're going to pray salah. And apologies to everyone who couldn't get their questions answered today. Like I said, follow the Sheikh on YouTube and bi'idhnillah, your questions will be addressed. What general advice would you give to sisters striving to please Allah in the West?
General advice to sisters striving to please Allah in the West. Advice that I gave to some of my students and some of my ex-students some years ago. The female students. I said, shatter the stereotype. Break the stereotype. Women shouldn't seek knowledge. Women talk too much. Women gossip too much. Maybe they do. Women are, their mind, they're not good for this. Women should just stay in the house and just have babies, that's it. A woman shouldn't give any advice to her husband, etc., etc., etc. Women shouldn't read. Women shouldn't be taught. They shouldn't be educated. Your ticket to Jannah is me dominating every facet of your life. Micromanage your life. What to wear, what to eat, how to sleep, how to drink, from A to Z. I'm your husband, I'm telling you what you have to do, and that's your way to Jannah, etc., etc. Shatter those things. And how can you shatter the stereotype when you fall victim to the stereotype? Women, sisters shouldn't seek knowledge, they shouldn't learn. A sister, she takes a class and then she drops off. A sister, she takes a class and then there's scandal with the teacher. He was going to marry her. Oh no, he's supposed to marry me. Sisters, they start a class with a female teacher and then there's hasad and namima and ghiba. And the people in the background say, see, didn't I tell you? That's why you shouldn't have been teaching those sisters. Didn't I tell you women shouldn't be seeking knowledge? Didn't I tell you just to stay in the house and have babies? Didn't I tell you that? So every time you fall victim, the stereotype becomes what? Bigger and stronger and unbreakable. Interracial marriages, big problem. Don't marry outside of your race. Don't marry outside of your culture. Don't marry outside of your family. but he's a Muslim, he's righteous, he's pious, he's knowledgeable, I love him, etc. Don't marry. Forget about it. If you marry outside your racial culture, I'm going to disown you, your children, they're not my grandchildren, etc., etc. So the daughter, she doesn't listen. She goes, whatever, against her father's advice or mother's advice. She marries the brother, everything's good. 2 weeks later, she comes home with a black eye. 2 weeks later, oh, we got into a fight together. 2 weeks later, 9 months later, she has a baby, we're divorced, she's back home. What are they going to say? We what? We told you. And then the racism and the stereotype only becomes what? Stronger. Women talk too much. Women can't control their mouths. Women always gossip. Women, they have so much envy. They're so immature and petty and blah, 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 blah. And then you come to the masjid, to the lecture, and it's what? Chat, 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 chat. Riba, riba, riba. Namina, namina. Fulana, and fulana, and fulana, and fulana, and fulana, and fulana. So the negative sisters say, don't go to the masjid. You wearing niqab makes you nothing special. You're the same sister that I am. I don't wear hijab. You wear niqab and gloves. You're nothing. That does what? That solidifies the stereotype. So you have to be the change in the world that you want to see in the world. You have to be the change that you want to see. You want to see people stop oppressing sisters? You have to stand up for yourself. You want people to stop discriminating against sisters? Show them I'm a serious student of knowledge. And I'm going to be just as good as any of your male students. Well, how could that? That's my advice. Wallahu alam.
Jazakumullah khairan to the Sheikh. Obviously, alhamdulillah, we'd love to benefit more. And subhanallah, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to have you again, inshallah.
Bismillah, jazakumullah khairan.
One day, inshallah. So we're going to break that to the Sheikh. Just so you know, the Sheikh is modeling some fine designer gear, mashallah, HadithDisciple.